Welcome to the 10-Minute Food Truck Training Podcast. My name is Bill Moore. I am the founder of Food Truck Training on Facebook, co-owner with my beautiful wife, Melissa, of our own food truck. It's called Food Truck 101, and I'm the executive director of the National Street Food Vendors Association, which is a nonprofit dedicated to education, advocacy, and uplifting all food vendors. Today I'm going to be talking to you about my experience at the first ever Food Truck Owners Expo that was held in Houston, Texas. But before we get into that, I want to thank Table Needs for sponsoring this episode of the 10-Minute Food Truck Training Podcast. Table Needs is a full-service POS system capable of handling your busy food truck, cash, credit card, and reporting needs. Check out the link in the description for more information about Table Needs. So let me tell you about the Food Truck Owners Expo. And if you weren't able to attend the Food Truck Owners Expo in Houston, we're having a second one. It'll be this year in Orlando on November 12th and 13th. And it will be very similar in what we did in Houston, as far as we'll have a whole bunch of exhibitors, actually more exhibitors. And I'll be participating, giving a couple of classes, and I'll be also a part of the Campfire Networking Lounge, where we'll be able to sit down and talk and answer any kind of questions you guys have, or you can just listen to me chat about whatever the topic is at hand for that particular segment. So let me start at the very beginning with our trip to Houston, Texas. Melissa and I decided to drive rather than fly. We were going to be collecting up a whole bunch of equipment and other materials that were being used in our booth for the National Street Food Vendors Association. And since I knew we were going to be going to Orlando, we just decided it would make more sense for us to drive out there, pick up all that stuff, and bring it with us since we live in Florida anyway. So we decided to drive. We left on Saturday. We left kind of early for us because typically Melissa likes to drive at night. So we left a little bit early, around 10:30, and then we expected to get into Houston probably around 9 o'clock or so. That would be a nice leisurely drive for us. Melissa had a couple of places she wanted to stop on the way to do a little bit of shopping. So we take off. Pretty much as soon as we get out of our area, it starts raining. It's not a hard rain, but it's just enough of a rain to be annoying. So we get to the first area where Melissa was planning on stopping, and she decides that it's raining too hard. She doesn't want to get off and deal with that. So we'll just continue on. So we continued on our journey towards Houston, because there were 5 other places that she was wanting to stop at that happened to be very close proximity to Interstate 10. That's the road that we were driving on. So we continue our drive. We get into Mobile, Alabama. If you're familiar with Mobile, Alabama, you know on I-10 there is a tunnel. And typically people don't know how to navigate that tunnel, so the traffic will back up a little bit before the entrance. Not too unusual. So being true to form, the traffic was backed up, but it was backed up a long way before the tunnel. So we were thinking there was probably a wreck along the way somewhere. Well, we get all the way through the tunnel, and we expect the traffic to lighten up, but still, very heavy traffic, so we knew there had to be a wreck somewhere. Except we never did pass that wreck. The traffic stayed pretty much backed up, being stop-and-go traffic or very low speed traffic, all the way to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So all the way through the rest of Alabama and all the way through Mississippi, traffic was backed up, start and stop, or going really, really slow. And again, we never saw one wreck. We get to Baton Rouge, and we expect traffic just to continue the same pattern that we had seen all the way through the last 2 states. But for some reason, the traffic just thinned out, and it became much easier of a go. Melissa was able to do the speed she wanted to go, and we made really, really good time. But at that point, it had gotten to be so late in the day, she just decided we are not stopping anywhere. We're just going to go on into Houston. So I had to call the hotel where our reservations were to make sure they had an open room for Saturday night, because they didn't expect us until Sunday, which they did, which was awesome. They were very accommodating. And we just said, we're just going to drive and we'll get there. So we get all the way through, or almost all the way through Louisiana, and I'm texting people, yeah, we're going to be there really soon. And traffic backs up. Not only does it back up, it is standstill traffic. We're thinking, well, there's got to be another wreck somewhere. It took us over an hour to go 8 miles. So now the time is getting to be really, really late in the day, because at this point, we are 10 hours into a trip that should have only taken 9. And then, like I said, 8 miles, and we are another hour. So now we're over 10 hours into a trip that should have only taken 9. The problem was, right inside of Texas on I-10, they decided that it would make sense to thin down the traffic going west down to 1 lane. And of course, you know how people are when traffic is going to thin down to 1 lane. rather than going ahead and anticipating that and getting into the single lane, the people want to zoom all the way down and see if they can cut in front of other people, which makes it a pain for all the rest of us that are being courteous and kind as far as driving goes. So we get through that mess. It took us about 90 minutes to go a little over 10 miles, and finally the traffic's thinned down. It's late enough in the day that there's not a lot of people out either, so we're able to make good time the rest of the way. We decided to eat dinner because we hadn't really ate much of anything other than fast food when we would fill up the truck. So we sat down at a Denny's, and it was actually quite a good experience. I was afraid it wasn't going to be, but it was an awesome experience. They fed us really good food and took care of us very quickly. We got fed, headed on over to the hotel, and what should have been, again, a 9-hour total trip, maybe 10 if we were leisurely with our meals, turned into being 14 hours. We were beat. We had to get up early the next morning to go start the day at the Civic Center. So we both fell into bed, and then Melissa got up the next morning with me, got ready to go. She took me to the Civic Center, and then she came back to get some more rest. So my goal at the Civic Center that day was to set up our booth and then just to orient myself to the way the Civic Center was set up, where the classes were going to be held, which classroom I was going to be in, and just figure out just the logistics of how my day was going to go. As soon as I walk into the Civic Center, I recognize two of the people there. So the first two people I see are people that I've worked with in the past, and we stand around and talk for a few minutes. And while I'm talking to them, the organizers come up and grab me and take me and show me around and get me my badges and all those kind of things. And they show me where I'm going to be. I was expecting to be in one classroom multiple times, and that wasn't the case. I was in multiple classrooms multiple times, and the classrooms were not side by side. They were on opposite sides of the venue. The campfire area where I was going to be set up hadn't been set up yet because it was adjacent to the back doors, and they were still people coming in and out through the back doors, and they didn't want to set up that area until all the coming and going was discontinued. As I'm looking around, a lot of people were in the middle of setting up. A few people had already been set up, and there were a whole bunch of empty booths. But every single booth was committed to somebody, which was awesome, because as recently as about a week or so before the expo itself, not everything had been rented out or sold. So it was nice to see that all the spaces were taken up by somebody. And there were several businesses I had no idea who they were. So I was looking forward to meeting all those people. I helped my team when they arrived. They all come a little bit after 1 o'clock, I believe. And we set up our booth, and our booth sets up in maybe a half hour, 45 minutes at most, and that was them showing me what needed to be set up, because the team that helped me in Houston will not be able to help me in Orlando. So that means I'll have to set it up myself and perhaps have a few additional people help me out. I texted all the people that I had asked to come meet me at the Civic Center, and they all eventually showed up. I gave them their shirts because we wanted to make sure we all looked very professional, so we had matching shirts designed for us and embroidered with the NSFVA logo. And then I gave everybody their credentials so they'd be able to come in and out, and gave them a brief overview of what we wanted to do with the association booth itself. Since I couldn't be there, I had to depend upon other people to relay the message about our association. Melissa was going to be in and out between taking care of the booth and then also helping me with whatever I needed to do. But that was all Sunday. At the end of setting up on Sunday, they had a reception for us at a local restaurant. We go to set up there, or go to have dinner there rather, and as I walk in, there's a number of people that knew who I was, that I did not know who they were. So it's very disconcerting to have people come up, stick their hand out, and want to shake your hand, and you don't know who they are. I pride myself on at least remembering faces. I may not remember names. I'm not real good with that, but I know if I've worked with you in the past, or I've met you in the past, or at least talked to you on Zoom, I know those things. There were so many people that were talking to me, no clue who they were. So the reception went off quite well. We stayed much later than we had anticipated, but it was a good time for everybody. There's a whole lot of socialization and people getting to know each other. So it was an awesome feeling to see this many people come together and talk about a single subject, and that's food trucks. It was pretty cool. Monday, I'm giving 2 classes. Tuesday, I'm giving 2 classes. One of them's a repeat. So I get there early to have coffee and just kind of socialize and meet people and just kind of see what the venue's all about. And there's a few people there that early. Not many, but a few. My first class was at 10 o'clock. All the classes started at 9 o'clock. So that meant there was somebody in the classroom ahead of me. Not a big deal. Gave me a chance to go through my presentation because I put these presentations together and basically did not have time to review them. And as I'm going through one of them, I realized that I wrote some slides the way that I talk. And that's not exactly good when you're presenting, because there would be slang and other types of words in there and hillbilly things that probably don't do well on a presentation. So I had to go and edit those very quickly. The problem with that was, as I was sitting, people would come up and talk to me, want to meet me, want to say something, tell me they've read my book. So after I got the presentation, at least what I thought was edited enough to be useful for people when they would view it, I go into the room and I am met with the big crowd that was there before me. And I'm like, ooh, this is pretty cool. A bunch of people came early, and a bunch of people are here to learn about food trucks. So I plug up my laptop and make sure that everything works. And we've got about probably 7-8 minutes before the class is supposed to start. And then one of the organizers comes in and wants to put a microphone on me because they're going to videotape the session. Okay, no problem. So they put a microphone on me. We do the testing. They had a translation program set up so that people that didn't speak English would be able to read along in Spanish. And it was a very good translator, and it did it in real time. So they didn't lose track of where I was based on the presentation slides I was showing. So that was pretty neat. And it also allowed them that if they couldn't speak English or Spanish, they could go to a website and use their phone to get a translation in their language. Again, a pretty neat little setup that they had going on. So I'm going to be videoed. No big deal. Do it all the time. And the classroom is filling up. And it's continuing to fill up. And the appointed time rolls around, and you know how I am. I start on time. So we start the presentation. And I get into it, go through the material. And then as I'm probably a quarter of the way into it, more people are coming in. It gets to the point now where it's standing room only. It gets to the point after about 20 minutes into the presentation that not only is it standing room only, but there's no more room for standing room only. And I was very surprised that many people came to that particular session. That session was on writing a profitable menu. If you've been to my masterclass on food costs, we talk about that. So I just expanded that talk about menu engineering and menu pricing and expanded that to a 45-minute session. And it was pretty cool, again, that we were so packed. It took me exactly 45 minutes to go through the presentation. I got done on time. Sadly, there wasn't enough time to answer questions, but I told people to come out and join me at the campfire session, and we'll answer all those questions. So after we get done with that class, I've got an hour break, and then I have to present my next class, and it's going to be at noon, and that was a time when most other people were going to be eating, so I didn't expect that one to be really full. It was going to be about the association and explain what the association does and how important it is for food vendors of all types to learn how to speak with a single voice so that we can affect change in our own industry. So again, I didn't expect that one to be very full. We go to do that one, and it's in the same size classroom, but it's a different classroom than the first one was, and it was full. It wasn't jam-packed standing room only, but it was completely full. Every seat was taken. There were maybe a couple of extras. Now, this is the first time I've given this presentation, so it goes through relatively quickly. What I thought would be 45 minutes ended up being about 30. So it left enough time for question and answers, and we had some really good question and answers. And of course, I reminded people at the appointed time that I'll be out on the floor doing the campfire networking lounge. Please join me if you'd like to hear more. And people did. We had a whole bunch of people, except the problem was it was a very open area, and it was adjacent to the main expo floor. So there was a lot, and I do mean a lot, of noise. Now you guys can hear me, and I have a microphone that's about 4 or 5 inches from my face for me to talk into. At the Campfire Networking Lounge, it was set up with about 15 chairs in a semicircle, and they were fairly good distance away from where I was standing. And all the noise, all the ambient noise from the expo pretty much was funneled into where we were. So even shouting didn't work. And of course, I couldn't maintain shouting very long because I still have more classes to give on Tuesday. So I ended up talking to just a handful of people from side to side on the room, and no one could hear each other. It was not a very good setup, but I still had a blast doing it because people asked some really good questions. I was actually impressed with the quality of the questions. They were things that in some cases I've not thought of. It's like, oh, that's a good question. Let's figure out the answer. So I had a lot of fun with that. Then we go to Food Truck Park that evening, and several of the exhibitors come along with me. Many others just end up showing up there anyway. There was one food truck in particular that I wanted to share with some of my friends and some of the other exhibitors. It's called Big Papa Jerk. He was somebody that I've worked with the last 18 or so months. Really good people. They came and helped us with our association booth. He even took over for me at the campfire session when the organizers realized that Bill hasn't eaten yet. So they let him take over for me while I went and had something to eat real quick. All in all, first day was awesome. Second day gets started. Apparently, my popularity preceded me because now I can't sit down anywhere without somebody wanting to come up and talk to me. So the 2 presentations that I wanted to review just to make sure they were where I needed them to be, I wasn't able to review. And again, one of them I've not given before. So I needed to go over it just to kind of mentally prepare myself. That's how I have always done any kind of presentation. Give me 10 minutes before and I'm good to go. Well, I didn't have 10 minutes. I didn't even have a single minute. Everybody wanted to come up and talk to me, ask me questions. People wanted to get my photograph. Don't know why. They wanted autographs for books. It was an amazing feeling, but also really disconcerting for me because I'm not used to being popular. But in any case, we go through and I go give my first class. It's a full class. There were a couple of empty seats. So obviously some of the people that came on Monday did not come on Tuesday, and that's okay. I go to give my next class, and it is in the biggest room. It seated double what the other rooms would seat, and I pretty well filled that one up. There were still some empty seats, but we had gone from a room that seated 60 to a room that seated 120, and it was pretty darn full. Good class. And then we had enough time for a couple of questions and answers. And then some of the questions required longer answers, and they were like, Bill, you got to go to the next one. You got to go to the next one. So I had to end that one. But still, very, very good class. It was on marketing. As I leave that class, I'm heading towards the change of venue for the networking, because now they're doing the networking in a place where they have a microphone and voice amplification so people can actually hear me, and they're explaining to me where that's going to be. We get stopped many times. People want to shake my hand. They want a picture. They want, again, the autograph. And it got to the point where we couldn't move hardly at all. And it was still very fun for me. I found out later in the day that some of the classes had next to nobody attend. And then the question was, why is there no one here? And then they would look at the schedule and go, oh, we're up against Bill Moore. And that became kind of a compliment because I was actually drawing in more people. And that was a good feeling. Overall, the Expo was awesome. Every vendor that was there, every exhibitor that was there loved being able to interact with people. Some of them, this is their very first event, and they're getting good information. They're being asked good questions. They got people that are interested in their products, and that's what a conference of this nature is all about. Exposing the people that use the products to new and different products. There were people that were sampling one particular vendor that has vegan options, and they had a bunch of food set up, and every single person that tried it, and there were many people that didn't want to try it because it's vegan and they have those preconceived notions, were like, oh my God, this is awesome. Now sadly, I didn't get to go over there and try any because I was quite busy, but Melissa tried it. The folks from Big Papa Jerk tried it, and he even said, I'm going to add one of those products to my menu because now it gives me an option that other trucks where he sets up at don't have. They had things like vegan hot dogs, vegan sliders, and vegan tacos. Very, very good stuff. So if you haven't had an opportunity to go to Houston, Orlando's coming up November 12th and 13th. You've got to go there. You've got to be there. This is something not to be missed. It's a very special feeling to look out and see a whole bunch of happy people talking about food trucks. It's awesome. You guys got to be there. Thank you guys so much for listening to the 10-Minute Food Truck Training Podcast. Please take a moment to follow the podcast, and if you really like what we do, support us. There's links in the description to help make that happen. Every little bit does help keep us going. Until next time, you guys have a profitable day.